Big thank you to our friends at Dr. V for jumping on board and supporting Dylan Friends. We absolutely love them. Dr. V is a 100% natural energy drink. No jitters, no crash. Just good herbs infused together in a drink of goodness. We love it. And guess what? It's Aussie made and Aussie owned. I've been absolutely flat out lately trying to juggle Dylan Friends, List Cloggers, life, catching up with mates, the Tofu Princess, and everything else in between. And Dr. V helps me stay on task. It helps me get good podcast guests for you, the vocab high, and makes me feel good. So ditch the crap, jump online at drv.com.au and order some Dr. V. When you use the code DylanFriends, all lowercase at checkout, you get 25% off your order. We absolutely love it. Give it a go. It's also available at Richie's IGAs, independent grocers, and Easy Marts around Australia. Let's go.
Becky Lucas, welcome to the Dylan Friend podcast, my friend. It's an honour, pleasure, privilege to have you on the show.
Oh, well, it's my honour to be here. You're the star here. You're the one, I saw you on top shows on iTunes. Or
number one
Apple.
In the charts, number one in the hearts of Australian public is what I like to say.
It's amazing. So I owe you.
No, not at all. I've been wanting to get you on for a long time and have a chat about your story because it's one that I definitely love and I love all your work of what you've been able to do. But one thing I wanted to touch on, I was chatting with your incredible team who was teeing this up. You've got a team. Like, I don't have a team. I just do all the, you have like some team around you that really, set your diary. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I'd love to get to that level one day.
I mean, it's just two chicks.
No, don't undersell that.
To call them a team.
I don't have anything. You've got a team. It's unbelievable. Shout out to Ella. She's doing some great things.
Yes, she's great.
Hey, you're doing incredible things. You're a comedian. You're a comic. I don't know which one to say out of those two. You're an actor, TV writer. You're an author as well, which we'll talk about your book today, which is unbelievable. One thing I always have a question like for comedians, and I can imagine would be the most incredibly annoying question. And just by the way, you're just vaping at the moment, and I'm like, so that is awesome.
Sorry.
That is cool.
I thought it was that kind of show.
It is. No,
so
I love that we're
I'll
friends.
vape.
Yeah, we're just like friends. We're so friends at the moment. You're just vaping in my face. It feels incredible. The worst question I can imagine getting asked as a comedian is like, do people like just expect you to be funny all the time?
I don't even know if they do expect it, but I certainly feel that if I'm not, there's a part of them being like, she's not actually funny. Like, I can feel them making that judgment. And I'm like, well, that's like, I can be funny if I choose to be, but like sometimes I don't want to be, like, I want to talk about something earnestly.
So you like the D&Ms as well?
Yeah, I love a D&M, but I don't know. I always like to have had one funny chat with someone to prove I can do it, and then I can chill. You've
got off to a really good start. I think we've obviously acknowledged that you're a comedian, and we're excited by that. Now, I'd love to sort of just get a bit of a background on yourself before you've done all these awesome, cool things. Where did you grow up? What was your life like?
Well, I actually grew up in Queensland. I'm a Queensland girl, which you can probably tell from my voice and general demeanour.
What makes you say that?
I just think I've got a bit of a rank voice. Like, it's a bit...
I like your voice. It's cool.
Thanks, Dill. Then why am I not charting in fucking podcasts? What's wrong with me? I grew up in a town that was... I've got this theory about how a town 40 minutes out of a major city is like the worst place. Do you know what I mean? You know, like if you keep it, like the city's pretty good and then country gets good again. But if you're 40 minutes out, that's the worst place.
Have you seen The Dry?
No, I haven't.
It's one of those like little things in your life you don't even realize until you hear someone say it. But I hope we're on the same page here. Is like when people say, and I hope this isn't offensive to you because it sounds like this is what you've grown up with, but it's like you've got the worst of both worlds. So you're in the country, but you're living in the city in the country. Is that what it is?
Pretty much. And I reckon it's because if you live 40 minutes out, it's close enough that you'll just go to the city for what you need. So no one bothers to make that place good. It's just shit. But if you're like 2 hours away, then you make the effort to make that town better.
Yeah.
You know, like the pizzas are not, there's not a worse pizza place 40 minutes out. Because like city good pizza, country weirdly good pizza, 40 minutes, worse pizza.
Yeah, I get that. And one of my other shows, we talk about a lot with pizza is like, you can have good pizza and then you can have good shit pizza. And like I nearly classify them into two different cuisines. Like
absolutely,
one's wood fire and it's like your Italian authentic. Then you've got your Pizza Hut, which again gets a bad rep, but sometimes you don't feel like the wood fire.
Best pizza is pepperoni Domino's classic. It's the best fucking shit in the world. It tastes so good. Like, you cannot tell me that is not good.
I'm
It's
look, I don't
good.
we're already friends. I don't want you to hate me like so quickly into the podcast, but
No,
like
that's okay. Friends can have differences of opinion. That's what we need to, all this division with coronavirus. We're all dividing up. We got to come together. So let's come together with different opinions.
Right. So when we catch up, we're going to have some Baileys and then you're going to order pepperoni. I'm going to have
and then we're going to get diarrhea.
I'm going to have a veggie. I like the veggie supreme from Domino's and I get added extra garlic onto that.
Okay, look, I like that too. Like that, I'm not, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I like the veggie. But you a vegetarian?
I am, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have
Do you hate me?
No, not at all. I just wouldn't have picked it. What an interesting cross-section of guy.
I know. It's like, in my life, I know you don't know a lot about the show, but let me just give you sort of like a quick rundown on me. Like, stereotypically, if you didn't know me, I used to play AFL. You should know that because I was a superstar.
Yeah.
But everything you'd think a footballer is like the opposite to what I am. I'm very like weak. I cry a lot, and like I like vegetarian food, and people refer to me a lot as a pissant. So like you'd sort of that's just a little bit of what I am in one. But that's why I don't even know where I was going with that, to be honest.
Why do people call you a pissant?
Oh, I just get like really car sick all the time.
Okay.
Sort of like can't sleep with like people that are like snoring near me. Just like those sort of little things.
I'm going to call you a pre-cum baby.
Yeah. No, that's the longer my life goes on, the more I think I was 100% like not like test tube or something
not meant
like that.
To be here.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and my eyes are really far apart too. Hey, let's stop talking about me. This is your interview. I'm sorry.
You're a cutie. You're so cute.
No, don't say that. That's you're just being mean. Now, comedian, your transition from growing up in a great suburb in Brisbane, which we've just classified, sounds fantastic.
Yes.
How was the transition? Like, how did you like become a comedian? This is like a really weird question. Bear with me on this, but like, how did you become a comedian? Was it something that you like grew up and you're like, okay, Becky's going to be a comedian, she's really funny? Or was it like, did you have a job as like an accountant and then you're just like, fuck this, I'm going to be a comedian one day?
Okay, well, what happens is for every comedian, you get a knock on the door and it's Jerry Seinfeld. And he says, kid, you got to do comedy, all right? It's been decided. No, sorry. I was like funny and I always liked comedy. Like my dad, always played stand-up on tapes and stuff. And if there was a comedian or whatever, we'd go and watch. But it was never something I aspired to. I wasn't like some people who do comedy. They're like, I always wanted to do it and blah, blah, blah. Like, I liked it and stuff. And I found it interesting. Like, it was a good way to get information. Like, I felt like stand-ups always have a strong opinion. So I was like, okay, I can understand that opinion through comedy. Like, I enjoyed that. And then I don't know, like I think I went traveling when like I was in my early 20s and I got back and I just had like a feeling of like being able to do whatever I wanted or feeling like I had a real reckless nature about me. And a couple of people I knew were doing stand-up, or like it was vaguely in my periphery. And I went and saw some stand-up and then I signed up to do it. So it's like kind of it's sort of boring. You just kind of you kind of like, oh, I can do that. And then you have to take those steps to do it. And then you're just doing it. Then you kind of get sucked in,
Yeah, I think you're definitely being modest with that and underselling how hard it is to be a comedian. Because I've thought about this a lot. I love people that can put themselves out there. I think there's a real there's a real resilience that you need to not just be a comedian but an actor and all these types of roles and even podcasting for that matter. Like you're literally putting yourself out there to be judged. So
yeah, you have to be like very okay with rejection and humiliation in a way. But I think, I don't know, being a stand-up, it's like you have to be okay with getting up in front of people and sort of failing and doing it publicly. Like stand-up isn't something, if you're a guitarist, you could sit in your room privately and practice guitar for hours and then one day just come out and be like, but if you're a comedian, it's like you have to do all your learning publicly. And sometimes it's really good and it works, but a lot of the time it doesn't work and you have to be okay with that. And I think people are a bit addicted to pain. Like if you're addicted to the emotion of like failure and feeling shit about yourself, it's a good option.
I love that. I think that it's definitely in the sense of like one thing that, a former coach used to say to me a lot was you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that when you get in that mindset, you sort of actually you get addicted to putting yourself out of your comfort zone, I suppose, and keep pushing those boundaries and feeling shit about yourself, but then growing from it.
Totally. And I also think it's like you start to realize that, your ideas are separate to you, or like what you do there. It's not like, I think some comedians, it's like they let it dictate their whole life. Like I did badly, so I suck. And I used to have that, but now I'm like, well, what I did there is not me. Like what I did on stage, or if it worked or didn't work, I'm still me. I still like have a life and friends and family, and like, I'm a person, and I might, my persona or what I set up on stage might have been rejected by an audience, but that's not me. Like it's a good way to be able to separate the ideas from the person. And I think that's really, so I like being not married to things that I say or whatever all the time. Like it's a separate thing.
Definitely. I think one thing that you mentioned in that resonates with me was like separating the person from the persona. So like, Becky Lucas of the person versus who you are on stage are two different people.
Yeah. And I might say something that it's like people don't like, and I'm like, hey, I might not like it next week either. I was just trying it out. And like,
isn't that scary though?
Oh yeah, because there's people that hate me. Like there's people that are like, she said it, then this is who she is, and I'm like, oh, I might have used to care that someone thinks that way, but I'm like, I know that I'm not that. I might have like said the wrong thing, but that's not who I am. And I mean, I'm sure when you were playing, you were like, people hated you or didn't based on this thing that you did, but that's not you.
Well, it's scary being in this day and age too, where like, especially for you, I'm not trying to worry you here, but me, in this podcast, like this day and age, we have so many sleuths that it's like, if you fucked up and you said one thing, 10 years ago or in your first or second episode or your first stand-up show, people go back and find it and you're like, fuck, like that was, yes, I fucked up. That was a long time ago. Like that's the biggest thing that scares me with like online things. I'm always just like, oh my God, how is this going to be received? But you've just got to, I think, own it and just be like, yeah, fuck, like that was what it was.
So it is hard being a comedian. And the worst thing about being a comedian is it's like you've got to toe that line all the time, because you don't want to just get up and talk about stuff that there's no point of view. So you're always towing this line. And when you get it right, you're celebrated. And then if you just get one thing wrong, like everyone hates you. And it's like, it's crazy. People are angrier at comedians for saying the wrong thing than they are at some politician who's just defunded like Aboriginal legal services or whatever. Like the rage people feel for words as opposed to actions is insane.
Comedy for Dummies 101. Sorry for these shit questions. Bombing on stage, is that a thing? Like, has that happened to you? Any experience in this?
Yeah.
I can imagine it'd be cool.
Yeah, bombing happens all the time to all comedians, and it never really stops. Like your worst gets better. Like sometimes I'll get off stage now and be like, oh fuck, I fucking bombed, and a newer comedian will be like, what? That seemed like it was really good, because your standard gets higher and higher. But you can still eat it pretty hard. Like, you might have like it does get harder to bomb as you get better, because you can kind of always fall back on an old joke, or you can like figure out how to get the crowd back on your side or whatever. Like when you're first starting out, the bombs are so insane because you're so nervous and you've just got your sort of jokes in your head and you haven't got enough experience or material to like fix the problem. So you'll just be in this set and no one's laughing and you're like, well, strap in because there's five more minutes and I don't know what else to do. Like I've had some shocking, I remember bombing at an RSL once, like a packed RSL theatre. 500 people, and it might have been in Coffs Harbour or something. And it was just like, it was silence. Yeah, I could hear people opening their drinks and shit.
Oh
It was so bad.
What are some of those fallback like gags? Like I can imagine, I've seen a lot of your live content, how quick and witty you are. Like do you have like a go-to fallback gag that you could just throw in people's face? Because I can imagine just the like, shut the fuck up back at someone or something like that just gets back into
No, but the worst thing is like if you're bombing and then you tell someone to shut the fuck up, the crowd's like, you shut the fuck up. Don't tell him to shut up. He's one of us. We hate you.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to I don't have like a gag in my pocket right now, but now you can kind of like, now I have the skills where I can like do a crumble and I'm like, you guys hate me, and then like you can kind of get a few laughs and hopefully get going with something else. But yeah, those bombs, there's nothing like it. You feel like you can't move, like the world, you feel like you're sinking into the stage. It's a really unique feeling. So shameful. It's crazy. Like you can really be a hero. You can walk off stage feeling like a hero, and you can walk off feeling like the biggest loser.
What about hecklers? Have you had any rippers in your time that have really tried to get up in your face?
Yeah, hecklers, the worst. Hecklers are pretty easy to deal with because you're in a pretty heightened state up on stage. Like you've got the microphone, you're probably not drunk. And you're like hyper focused. So often hecklers, like a heckler is much easier to deal with than people realize. The worst heckle is when someone's just like a middle-aged woman being supportive. That's the worst. That's actually the worst. So they're like, we love you, darling. Cause you're like, they're disrupting it, but they're not being a cunt. So you can't go at them really hard, but they'll kind of be persistently like, a woman in her 50s that's had 3 white wines is the worst heckler. Because she's just, she's so supportive and she'll never let up.
Love that. That's shout out to all the Karens out there. We love them, and they make Australia great. In terms of shows, like a comedy show now we've done with those one-on-one questions, that was for the fans who didn't know. How do you put a show together? Like I can imagine there's just so much work that goes into putting a body of work into what you'll go and then tour, and how many times you have to like workshop it? Do you have people that you're like going around, like that you have friends that you're like, is this joke funny? Do you go and do it at like a smaller crowd? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's something that you learn as you go along. Like I remember thinking all these questions. So you sort of like you'll write some jokes, and then you try them out at smaller rooms. Like you would write with some comedian friends and maybe ask if they think it's funny, and slip it into combo every now and then, see if it gets a reaction. But that's what I generally do, is sort of write and then take it to smaller rooms, and then once you've figured out if it's working, and like you're always tinkering with the joke to make it better, and then you would try it in a bigger room, see if it works, because that's the thing, like a joke can work in a small room with a bunch of people, and then you take it to a bigger room in a different town and it doesn't work. So it's a constant sort of figuring out how to make it work, broadly speaking. And then that becomes your new bit, and you kind of like have old bits and you bring in the new stuff sandwiched in between old, and then it's like a constant, And then when you put a show together, you just put it all kind of together. And some people like to have a thread through their show where they pretend something happened that it didn't.
And with that, like you can then just go like randomize stuff as well, can't you? Like a lot of your work I've seen, it's sort of like you'll talk about something, move on to other things. Yeah,
I tend to not like do shows that are themed or whatever. I just kind of, I'm like, here's stuff that's been funny that I've been writing for a year. And that's it annoys me because there's other people who like write a show and then everyone's like, it's brilliant, it had a beginning, middle and end. And I'm like, yeah, but what about, I've been fucking trying this stuff out knowing that it's funny, like working clubs. And for some reason, if you make people laugh for an hour, it's not seen as artistic. They're like, it didn't have a sad ending.
I love that. That's right.
But yeah, that's kind of how, everyone has a different process. Some people just write a whole thing and then try it out again and again. But I like to try out little chunks and make sure it's sort of all pretty funny.
and that you do well, my friend. And one
Thanks, Dill.
person that you're friends with, besides me now, is Conan O'Brien. That's like massive. You went on his. Am I right to say you went on his show? It was just in the States. Like how did this? And then you opened for him at one of his shows in Australia as well. Like there's a pretty close friendship here. How'd this all come about?
I mean, friendship is stretching it, but sure. It was so cool. So it actually happened in reverse. He was doing just one show here. And I was lucky enough to get picked to open for him, which was mad. Like, loved it. It was so much fun. And he was great, you know, like, I don't know if you've met many of your heroes, but they often suck.
Yes.
You know, like no one disappoints you more like a hero. But he was great, like so silly backstage, but, you know, also genuine and just a really nice guy. And a couple of months after that, my agent talked to the booker of the show and they liked what I did. And so I got to go and do his show and it was the best, man. It was such a pinnacle of my life. You know, it was like the whole Hollywood thing, like got picked up in a limo, like drove through the big white gates at the studio and, yeah, it was really cool.
Is there like a thing in comedy where when you open for someone, you're not meant to like go too well? Is that actually like a fact? Like you're not meant to like steal the crowd so it's hard? Is that like actually a rule?
I mean, I don't think I was ever going to steal the crowd from Conan. It's nice that you think that's a possibility. Nah, you just do your best. You know, I mean, and generally you're not going to be better than, because all those people are there to see that person. Like they love them so much. You're just probably never going to go better than them. So you do your best to like G everyone up and, you know, if the person you're opening for is a class act, they like give you a shout out and it's nice. I think it's like a way for them to also feel a bit like, hey, like here's a new person, I'm bringing them up. Because yeah, I guess that's kind of the best thing about being able to give someone else a little opportunity is always fun.
Is that prevalent in the comedy industry? Like, is it more or less like people get along and you sort of big each other up, or is there a side of like the industry that there is a few like wankers in there everywhere?
Man, I hate so many people in comedy, but I also love, like, I met some of the best people, best friends, like really I have a great time a lot of the time with the friends I've met in comedy. We, you know, so many laughs, such good people, and you just find your own little clique, you know. And so there is a lot of people getting along, and it can be really heartwarming, you know, sometimes. Like it is, everyone in comedy, it doesn't matter. Someone can be like, you know, a lot of people say comedians are fucked up, but I'm fine. And then I talk to them for 10 minutes and I'm like, oh yeah. And I'll always find something bad that's happened to them in their life. Like it's a group of people that have had something weird or kind of traumatic happen and they end up in this weird industry. And so there's always a little bit of camaraderie. You know, there's always something that brings you back together as people. A desperate desire to be liked.
Is that like, when you say that, like, do you think people that have been through that are in comedy, that like when you say traumatic things, that because they've probably been through something traumatic, they can then see the world in like this fucked up, funny light where they can make jokes about things that other people wouldn't necessarily find funny?
Totally. I mean, it's just a defense mechanism, you know, like if you can detach from a situation and see it in a funny way, then it doesn't hurt you as much. Like there is, you know, there's a power in being a little bit cynically detached from something, like not getting swept up in something that might be hurtful or whatever, because you're able to see the funny side of it. And I get annoyed when people get angry at comics for making jokes about stuff. It's like, well, you know, that's because part of their personality has been informed by, you know, maybe some pain or trauma or whatever. So that's just how we process things sometimes, is making jokes of it. And that's, I think, valid.
Yeah. No, yeah. I agree. Like my defense mechanism straight away is to just like, whenever I feel embarrassed or like nervous, you just take the piss out of yourself and it just takes off the situation of what you are, and it can just, it can be a very good defense mechanism. I've always found like my mates that, you know, you got those friends that just like can't take a joke, like
Oh,
when it's on
so
themselves,
funny.
and you're just
Yeah.
like, what the mate? Like we're not.
It's like, man, you're
personally
making it
attacking you.
worse.
You're making it worse. Literally,
Yeah.
just go with it. It's like people that like hate nicknames. It's like if you just embrace that nickname, no one's ever going to call you that again.
Totally. When we used to have a friend we called Weed because he was always popping up places we didn't want him.
I can't imagine he would have taken that one too well.
But it's like, just go with it. But then you don't want to go with it too much. Like you don't want to be like, it's like, stop trying to own it.
Yeah.
It was a sweet spot.
You mentioned
Yeah.
just before something that like sprang to mind, and again, I read into things. I'm very curious. I watch a lot of like, I love Bo Burnham. I don't. You know
Yeah.
Bo Burnham, like YouTube.
I do.
Guy, I love YouTube guy, Bo Burnham, and he speaks a lot about like that highs and lows of being a comedian, and speaks about like the prevalence of you know, I suppose we mentioned before, but like separating the person from persona. You're on a massive high because you're giving people so much joy, but then after the stage, you're like, fuck, am I always, you know, giving? And he sort of speaks about how prevalent like being on top of your mental health is in comedians. Like a lot of comedians do, you know, have to be on top of it because it is such an up and down career. Not personally asking, you know, about yourself, but what's your thoughts on that in terms of an industry and people in comedy and what they face like off the stage, I suppose?
I mean, it's hard. Like there's so many comedians who are so aware of it that they've got great mental health because they're like constantly analyzing and figuring out how they are and how they're feeling. Like I think there's a lot of dudes and women that are mentally ill, but they're just like, anyway, back to work, blah, blah, blah. Life goes on. Like they're not in tune with it. And like sometimes I think comics, I mean, maybe we spend too much time thinking about our mental health and that can't help the situation as well. Like my dad's always like, just go and lie in a field and look at the sun. That's how he deals with men. Yeah, like there. I mean, I think there is something to it in like. I think the urge to want to do stand up means that there's something not quite right about you because you're seeking validation, you know. And so once you set yourself on this path of seeking validation constantly from outside sources, that's not going to do yourself any favors. So yeah, you do have to be like aware, like, am I, you know, what other things bring me joy? Like, can I do something nice with my friends, or can I read a book, or like feel, you know, instead of trying to post something funny online. Like sometimes I see comedians and it's like, they're clearly having a mental breakdown. And the first thing they do is like go live. I'm like, don't go live,
oh, no,
bro, don't go live. They're like looking for this immediate hit of dopamine, and it's not good.
Yeah, I've got the 24-hour rule. When something like that happens, I just have to give myself at least 24 hours before I do anything about it, because pure anxiety until the levels settle down. I've always found drinking water helps. It's a tip. I don't know. A lot of people say it, but try it out.
Drinking water?
Yeah, it's really good for you, apparently.
I'm trying to cut down, personally.
Yeah, it's a new thing. It's a new thing. Besides comedy, so much going on in your life. I didn't actually know this until we were doing a bit of research on yourself, but you actually co-wrote The Other Guy, which is the series on Stan.
Yes, I did, yeah.
That's with Matt O'Kine?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's an awesome... I've seen that. That's awesome. It's
Oh,
really, really
cool.
good. Yeah, really good series. What was it like? Like, how do you even start writing a show? Like, I wouldn't even imagine how that even works.
Well, I mean, I've known... Actually, Matt O'Kine booked my first gig for me because I went... We had... My best friend's brother was his best friend, so I knew Matt growing up a little bit, and I told him that I wanted to do stand-up, and he actually booked me in to do my first gig.
Unbelievable.
I guess like it was his story, and he just needed someone to. I had a little bit of writing experience. I worked on Josh Thomas's show too, Please Like Me. So I had a bit of writing experience, and so yeah, I think he put my name forward, and the producers got me on board with that. But it's writing a show, how do you start? I don't know. You kind of just like plot it all out and then you just begin. Really.
I love it. It seems simple. I might go do one later.
Yeah, you could do it.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can even just call it Dylan Friends, the TV show.
Okay, watch this space. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about your book that you've written, which is unreal. That's so cool. Like, I feel like out of 10 coolness, like when you're like, before you wrote the book, what were you out of 10 coolness, do you think? Out of 10?
Man, you can't ask me that.
come on, just
You want me
between
to
friends.
rate my own coolness. I
Rate
mean, the
your
very
coolness.
nature of that is not cool.
No, it is. Trust me, it's
Because
cool
if
on
I
the show.
say cool, it's like, shut up. This bitch has got tickets on herself.
All right, I'll say just like a normal person writes a book. I reckon they're like a 7 out of 10. I reckon once
Okay.
you write a book, you go to an 8.5, like massively. Like, I reckon it's
Alright.
1.5 coolness.
That's
of
an
just,
interesting. That's
scale.
interesting that you
Yeah.
think that.
Yeah, well, that's
There's some pretty uncool people that have written books. I mean, Hitler for one, he wrote a book. So yeah, okay, there's your scoop, guys. Dill from Dill and Friends thinks Hitler is 8.5 out of 10 cool. There you go. There's your grab. News.com.au. Let's go.
didn't think that one through as best as I should have. Let's.
Nah, I got you,
Yeah.
mate. You're done.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
done.
I know.
skis.
Cancel culture. So your book, Acknowledgement, which is such a smart concept. It's very funny because basically it's a book of acknowledgements, which is in a book itself. I'm just explaining the joke to myself because I do really enjoy it, and
Thank
it's
you.
literally like you've talking about people you've met or experience you've had through your life that have impacted you both positively and negatively. How did you get the idea of this?
I just thought it'd be funny. I mean, I initially was just going to write a really long, like, thank you to Chicken Maggi Noodles. Like, I also want to thank Dexys. I'd love to thank, having 2 beers on a Sunday. Like, I thought that would be quite fun, but it would be a little much, I think, for a whole book. But I was like, I do like that idea of making it, because in the acknowledgements, yeah, people will thank someone, I guess, who like supported them or get help them with ideas and stuff. But I was like, I guess to write a whole book, it's like stuff had to happen to you in your life to write about. So I'll just dedicate the book to that, which I thought was kind of fun. But
It is
it's
fun.
really just a device to tell the stories I want to tell.
What is your favourite, maybe if you are happy to share some of the book, like what's one of your favourite chapters or inserts from the story? I've got one that I really like, but I wanted you to pick your first one first.
I mean, one of my favorite ones is there was one about my friend's dad who would write in his diary. So he had really badly behaved kids who I was friends with. And he started seeing a child psychologist or like behavioral therapist about how naughty his kids were. And like they bullied him so hard, it was crazy. And that like you'd go over there and they were bullying their dad and you just kind of get in on it because it was just what was on offer. And he got this diary to try and like, I guess, record what they were doing to then take it back to the therapist. But we found the diary. So like one day there was just, I know, like it was so bad. Like it was just like 4:24 p.m. Asked Terrence to do the dishes. His response, get fucked. And then like 6:30 p.m. told Stan to feed the cats. He farted and ran off.
Oh, poor dad.
It was the best. And then we just flipped ahead and then wrote all fake entries like 8:30 p.m. Oh my God, I've got the worst diarrhea. I'm going to shit. Yeah. So it just became a new device for which they could bully him. Yeah. And I think the acknowledgement was just like, thanks to my friend's dad for reminding me to never write things down if you don't want them to be found.
That's seriously, diaries are dead. I put locks on all my notes. They're like fingerprinted so no one can get into them.
Man, it's so embarrassing. Comedians often have like a notebook that you write down ideas and it makes sense to you, but if someone else reads it, it sounds like insane ramblings of an insane person. And I've left my diary or like my little notebook and it's mortifying to think of people going through and reading, half-baked ideas. It's so scary.
Yeah, let's definitely stick to that. Stick on digital.
Yeah.
Another 2 inserts that I love was one was the $500 gig at the Mexican restaurant.
Oh, yeah, brutal.
Can you tell us this is unbelievable?
This Mexican chain restaurant, I used to not say the name, but fuck it, I'll just do it. It was Zambroros, and they had an agency had approached them with this big idea that they were going to get a comedian in every single store on this one day, and it was going to like raise all this because it was for a good cause. It was like on that particular day they were getting comedians. It was too much information. It's like comedians were going to come and do a gig at every Sombrero store, and on that particular day, every single burrito or bowl that was purchased, a meal would be bought for people in need. So they thought it was going to like go crazy, like there was going to be heaps of press, but no one really cared. And there weren't enough comedians to kind of go around. So they were like, I got offered this gig up in like Gladstone. Was it Gladstone? Yeah. It was like North Queensland. So I got flown there, and I had not been doing comedy very long at this point, didn't have enough material. And I get there and the lady picks me up, and so everywhere else, all the other comedians were telling me like, oh, the gigs are being cancelled. No one prepared for it. Like they were turning up and just kind of getting paid the money and then getting told to just go home. Don't worry about it. But I went to Gladstone and they really got psyched for me to perform at their Zamboros. And I thought it might be a restaurant. Like I thought it would be a sit-in Zamboros. But when we got there, so I got picked up by a woman called Trish, this woman in her 50s, and she had her face painted like a tiger because they were so excited about the big day. They'd gotten a face painter in, they got balloons, but it was inside of a shopping centre. So it was like Terry White Chemist, Zambreros, and then McDonald's. And it was a deserted kind of food court. There was like some guys in high vis, a mum and her kid. It was crazy. And I had to do 10 minutes of comedy. It was the worst. Like, and they gave me a little microphone on a trundle, like it was attached to a speaker, and I had to like weave my way through these people. No one wanted me to perform. And I had to get up and like the first joke, it was too rude. Like this woman was covering her kid's ears. People were walking past, shaking their head. And then after 2 minutes, the lady just went, I think that's enough, love.
Oh, no.
We might stop it there. And so the drive to Zamboros, to the shopping centre, was pretty awkward, but the drive back to the airport was worse. And the worst thing was her face was still painted like a tiger. So she was just this really disappointed tiger. And the whole way on the trip back, she's like, you'll get there, love. You know, and then she just started listing other comedians who are better. She's like, you know who did come here? Kitty Flanagan. Carl Barron, he came through. He's funny. He's the best.
Oh, that is the definition of uncomfortable.
Man, it was really one of the worst times of my life. Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine.
But that's the best thing about comedy is you suffer these huge embarrassments, but life goes on. You know, it's not like someone takes you around the back and shoots you in the head. Like there's no real consequences.
That's
it's quite freeing. Yeah, it's quite freeing. You're like, what else? No one can get to me. I've been shamed too much. You cannot possibly hurt me.
Yes, the shark skin, I think it is. You definitely would gather it. Another one that sort of hit home with me, and I suppose the audience in this, because they'll definitely be really prevalent in some people that listen to the show. They might know someone like this, but it's the thank you to sport. And it's at the MCG with a couple of the private school boys. Now, it sort of brought back memories, and I'll let you tell a story, but in this story, I'm the guy that wants to take the piss, and I want to go to the toilet, and my friends aren't letting me. But the difference between my friendship group and the group you're talking about is we weren't rich. We were just like the real poor kids that were doing this. So, it sort of hit home on a few levels.
So I was in the members box because a friend had weirdly got tickets through someone.
What game's this? What game was it?
Yeah, it was NRL. It might have been Roosters and Rabbitohs.
Yeah, it became.
Yeah,
I go for the Rabbitohs,
classic. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't really
but
follow
NRL. You're just saying that to impress me.
Well, I lived in Sydney for 2 years.
You know it's the right team to say.
Well, I didn't. I knew 100%. I lived in Sydney for 2 years, and I lived in Paddington, and that's a quite of a
that's a Roosters area.
And everyone was like, "You got to go for the Roosters." I was like, "No, I'm going for the Rabbitohs because I watched Bra Boys when I was younger, and Johnny Sutton played for them, and I like them."
Yeah. It speaks volumes if you go for Roosters over Rabbitohs.
Thank you.
Like, all right. But anyway, so it was like a group of just private school young guys, those sorts of guys like, wearing puffer vests. They want to look like their dad. And they're all like, none of them could do anything without getting called a pussy. It was so funny. Like there was just these two, because you could see just the regular general seating, like next to members seating. And there's just these two like Islander boys with their dad looking over like at these fucking gooses. And you could just see them being like, if we ever did that, like we'd get a hiding, like you fucking fucks. But there was just a bunch of them, and they were so like that. they were all so scared of getting called a pussy, and like one of them would do one little thing and they're like, oh, you're a fucking pussy, you fucking pussy. And like just so entitled, like throwing drinks in the air. Like one landed on some poor like older man. Like, yeah, just acting way too tough for where they were and like very entitled. And it was so funny watching them try not to like do anything wrong. And then one of their team scored Roosters scored a try, and they all went crazy, and they were like, yeah, fucking, like, because they're all trying to be really manly, and they were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then this one guy was like, yeah, and he ended up squealing. Like try to be so manly that he went up into being the girliest sound you could ever hear. And yeah, you could just see him being like, oh, I've fucked up here.
Yeah, no, I've felt that one a fair bit. But yeah, definitely there's so many incredible stories in there. It's available now on Booktopia. Can we get it in store as well? I don't even, we're not really allowed to go outside here in Victoria, but I think the rest of Australia is allowed to go outside, so that's available.
You can get it in store, you can get it online, you can get it on Kindle, you can get it on audiobook. Some people are enjoying listening to it, which I don't know why. I hate my voice, but some people, they're a glutton for punishment.
You read, so because with this, when you write it, like, did you have to read the whole thing and record it? Like, is that how those work?
I did. I had to.
Was that hard?
And I'd also done MDMA the weekend before. So
I can imagine that would be pretty hard.
It was really hard I had to really dig deep. I was having the Tuesday blues, and I was like, all right, here we go. Comedy.
Because with those books as well, don't you, like, when you have to like literally get a whole sentence out, if you stuff up a sentence, you have to start all the way again. So they're quite big bits that you have to get right.
Yeah, it was so annoying. Like, yeah, you couldn't make a single mistake. So your whole time you're like, don't fuck up. Because as soon as you do, the sound guy's like, all right, do it again. So you're just trying to avoid, all right, do it again.
The underlying thing about this book too that I wanted to say, and I know this was a part of the plan, but that all these stories and all these things that you talk about, they are positive, negative, but I think the best thing about them is that you learn from them, and that's like you've used them in your life later on growing up. And one thing I love, because I think people always say like, you know, this really cool thing happened to me and it changed my life. Like, I'm a really big believer in like the worst things that happened to me in my life are the best things for me, like later on.
Yeah.
So that was something as well with the book. Like, a lot of your negative experiences, you look back with comedy, that's how you've dealt with them. But then later on, you've actually found that's had a massive impact.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I mean, they always say that, like, you learn more, like, you want things to go well. And I mean, that's the premise of comedy, I guess. Like, when a gig goes well, it feels really good. But when a gig goes badly, you learn so much more from it. Like, you know, you're like, okay, I've seen that, how that can go. I've seen that situation, and now I know how to deal with it the next time. So, yeah, I think it's just important for people to, you know, when something bad happens, I know it really sucks in the moment, and it's really annoying when someone tells you that, oh, well, you'll learn. But you do. And the things that most agitated me or most got under my skin, you know, I don't feel that way anymore. Now they're just a different way to like connect with someone. You know, it gives you more empathy, it gives you more compassion. Like, every time something bad happens to you, it's like, oh, well, that's a new feeling I have, and that's a new way I can understand the world. So it was, there was a little nod to that in the book, I hope, that comes through. So I'm glad you said that. It's nice.
Definitely does. Becky, you've done such incredible things. I always finish on this. What's next for you?
I don't know, man. I just got a new cat. So.
Cat girl. Cool.
Yeah, I was never a cat girl. Yeah, I was never, like, honestly, even when I say cat, I feel like I always have to tell people, like, don't worry. I'm not, but it's cute, man. It's a little kitten. So I'll probably just play with that for a bit.
Awesome. That's really,
no, I don't know. Yeah, career-wise, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. Well, I mean, there was an earthquake today, so.
That was in Victoria. It was very cool.
That was in Victoria.
The only person who didn't feel it. So what's next for you? Earthquakes. Earthquakes on the comedy scene. Am I right? Yeah. You're going to be causing them.
Some little tremors. You did it. That little joke.
No, I didn't want to do any jokes today because you're the joker, and I just thought I'd just try and finish on one at the end.
No, I loved it.
Becky, thank you so much today. Like, honestly, I can't thank you enough for your time.
Oh, thank you, Dill.
I cannot wait to, hopefully when everything's up and running again, I can get to one of your shows in Melbourne or
Hell
Sydney.
Yeah.
And that'd be great.
We'll grab a not pint. What is it?
We'll grab a pint of Baileys.
We'll grab a pint of Baileys and then we'll spew. And that will make us friends.
Thank you, Becky Lucas.
Thanks, Dill.